I found a message from Ruben on her phone, and it began with the words, "Can't wait until you give birth to our child." 20 years ago, Philip, met Krista at a university cafe in San Diego. She was studying veterinary science back then, and I was finishing my doctorate in molecular biology. Our meeting was accidental. She spilled coffee on my research papers, and instead of getting angry, I asked her out for coffee the next day. We talked for hours about everything: her dreams of working with animals, my passion for scientific research, our favorite movies and books. She had this incredible laugh that made everyone around us smile. A year later, we got married in a small ceremony at a beach in La Jolla, with just our closest friends and family. Her mother cried during the vows, and my best friend Edward gave a speech about how he'd never seen me so happy. 2 years after that, we moved to San Marcos, where I got a position at a research laboratory that was developing new treatments for rare diseases. Krista opened her own grooming salon called Paws and Claws, not far from our apartment on Twin Oaks Valley Road. The salon was small but cozy, with bright blue walls decorated with photos of dogs she'd groomed over the years. She loved her work, trimming dogs, taking care of them, making them look their best. Her clients often said their pets came out happy and relaxed. She had a special touch with nervous dogs, spending extra time calming them down before starting the grooming process. Some clients became regulars, bringing their dogs every month, specifically requesting Krista because their pets trusted only her. We had 2 children, 10-year-old Jonathan and 8-year-old Camilla. Jonathan was quiet and thoughtful, always reading books about space and planets. Camilla was energetic and artistic, constantly drawing pictures of our family. Our life seemed perfect, like something out of a movie. Every evening we had dinner together, discussing our day. The kids would tell us about school, Jonathan about his science projects, Camilla about her art class. Krista would share funny stories about her 4-legged clients, like the poodle who refused to stay still or the golden retriever who fell asleep during his bath. I would share successes from the laboratory, explaining in simple terms the breakthroughs we were making in gene therapy research. One time, my colleague Edward and I accidentally knocked over test tubes containing an experimental solution, and we had to spend 3 hours decontaminating the room in protective suits. The solution wasn't dangerous, but protocol required full decontamination anyway. Krista laughed until she cried when I showed her photos of us looking like astronauts in those bulky white suits. Edward had accidentally gotten some of the solution on his shoe and had to throw them away, which made the whole situation even funnier. On weekends, we would drive to the beach in Oceanside, about 30 minutes from our apartment. The kids would build sandcastles, competing to see who could build the tallest tower before the waves destroyed them. Jonathan would carefully construct elaborate fortresses with moats, while Camilla preferred making mermaids and dolphins out of sand. Krista and I would sit nearby on our blanket, holding hands, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Sometimes we'd bring a picnic, sandwiches, fruit, juice boxes for the kids. We'd stay until the stars came out, and Jonathan would point out constellations he'd learned about in school. Those were the moments I thought would last forever. The moments I believed nothing could ever destroy. But this fall something changed. In September, Krista started staying late at work. At first, it was just an extra half hour here and there. "A client called at the last minute," she'd explain, or, "I need to reorganize the supply closet." Then it became hours. She'd come home at 8, sometimes 9 in the evening when the kids were already getting ready for bed. I didn't pay much attention to it because my schedule was unpredictable too. Sometimes I had to stay late at the lab to monitor experiments that couldn't be interrupted, or to attend meetings with pharmaceutical company representatives interested in our research. In October, she announced she was pregnant. The kids and I were thrilled, a 3rd child. Jonathan said he hoped it would be a brother so they could outnumber the girls. Camilla wanted a sister to play dolls with. But something about Krista's behavior seemed distant. She didn't look as joyful as during her previous pregnancies. With Jonathan and Camilla, she'd been glowing, constantly talking about baby names and nursery decorations. This time she barely mentioned the pregnancy at all. One evening in mid-November, when Krista came out of the shower, I accidentally noticed bruises on the inner part of her thighs. They were fresh, dark purple marks that stood out against her pale skin. From fingers. Male fingers that were clearly larger than mine. I'd spent enough years studying human anatomy to recognize the distinctive pattern of fingerprint bruising from a strong grip. Where did these come from? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm and not accusatory. "Hit the table at the salon," she replied quickly, hastily putting on her pajama pants and pulling a t-shirt over her head. But I knew the human body too well. Bruises from hitting an object look different. They're more diffuse, spread out across the impact area. These were concentrated, distinct finger marks. These were from someone squeezing her thighs, holding them apart. The thought made me feel sick to my stomach, but I didn't say anything more that night. I needed to think clearly, not react emotionally. The next day, when Krista went to her salon and the kids were at school, I opened her laptop. The password was Jonathan's birth date, 04152015. Her email was already logged in. In her inbox, I found correspondence with Ruben Martinez, a dietitian from Los Angeles. It turned out this was her ex-boyfriend from high school, the one she'd dated before me. She'd mentioned him once or twice early in our relationship, but always casually, like he was just a part of her past that didn't matter anymore. They had reconnected 6 months ago through social media, through a people you may know suggestion on Facebook. Their messages were intimate. Too intimate. Ruben wrote about their meetings at the Roosevelt Hotel in Los Angeles, a historic building in Hollywood. About how he'd missed her all these years, how breaking up with her when his family moved to Los Angeles had been the biggest mistake of his life. About how they were meant to be together, how fate had brought them back into each other's lives. About how much better their physical connection was compared to what they'd had as teenagers. The messages made me want to vomit. Then I saw that message dated 3 weeks ago, "Can't wait until you give birth to our child. We'll finally be a real family. I've already started looking at apartments big enough for all of us." The child wasn't mine. I sat in the empty apartment, staring at the screen, feeling like my entire life was crumbling into pieces. 20 years of marriage. 2 children. And now, a 3rd child who wasn't mine. All those nights I'd rubbed her feet when they were swollen during previous pregnancies. All those midnight cravings I'd satisfied, driving to the 24-hour store to get her pickles and ice cream. All those ultrasound appointments I'd attended, holding her hand as we watched our children's tiny hearts beating on the screen. It had all been real with Jonathan and Camilla. But this was a lie from the beginning. But I didn't make a scene. I'm a scientist accustomed to acting methodically. I needed evidence. Emotional outbursts wouldn't help me or the kids. I needed facts, documentation, proof that would hold up in court. I installed a tracking app on her phone when she was sleeping that night, using software that my colleague Edward had told me about when he'd caught an employee stealing from the lab. The next week, the data showed she was driving to Los Angeles twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday. The drive took about an hour each way on the I-15 and then surface streets through traffic. She told me she was attending groomer conferences or meeting with suppliers about new products for the salon. I'd believed her because why wouldn't I? In 20 years, she'd never given me a reason not to trust her. On Wednesday, I took a personal day off and followed her. I told Edward the first needed time to handle a family situation, without going into details. I kept my distance, driving my silver Toyota Camry several cars behind her white Honda Civic as she headed north on the I-15. The morning traffic was heavy, giving me plenty of cover. She parked her car near a hotel in downtown Los Angeles, in a parking structure on Olive Street. Through 15 minutes, a man joined her, tall, athletic build, with dark hair styled with too much gel, wearing expensive-looking clothes. Ruben. They embraced near the entrance the way lovers embrace, not old friends. His hands went immediately to her lower back, pulling her close. She tilted her face up and they kissed, a long, passionate kiss that made me grip my steering wheel until my hands ached. I photographed them with my phone. Recorded the time, 10:47 a.m. Wrote down his license plate number, 8XYZ234, California plates. Took a video of them entering the hotel together. Then I sat in my car for 4 hours waiting. They emerged at 2:30 p.m., both looking relaxed and happy. She was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. He walked her to her car, kissed her again, and watched her drive away before getting into his own vehicle. A black BMW 5 Series that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. When I returned home, I started checking our finances. I logged into our joint bank account and began going through months of statements, highlighting anything unusual. And I found something interesting. Krista had withdrawn $70,000 from our joint account over the past 5 months. Small amounts, $2,000 to $3,000 at a time, so as not to attract attention. Money I earned by working long hours in the laboratory, sometimes 16-hour days when we were in critical phases of research. Money we'd been saving for the kids' education, for Jonathan's dream of attending MIT and Camilla's hope of going to art school. The withdrawals were always made at ATMs in Los Angeles, near the hotel district. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click like if you enjoy this story. I always read your comments and analyze which stories you like best so that I can create better stories. Thank you. I will continue the story. I acted quickly. The next day, I withdrew all my savings from my personal account in cash, about $150,000 that I'd inherited from my father and kept separate from our joint finances. I went to 3 different banks to avoid suspicion, withdrawing the maximum allowed at each location. Then I drove to Edward's house and gave him the money for safekeeping. Edward and I had been friends since graduate school and I trusted him completely. He was divorced himself, understood what I was going through. He put the money in his safe without asking questions, just gave me a hug and said, "Whatever you need, man. I'm here." Then I copied all the evidence, email correspondence, photographs, bank statements, tracking data, onto 2 flash drives. I gave one to Edward and kept one in a safety deposit box at a bank that Krista didn't know about. I also sent copies to my personal email account and uploaded them to a secure cloud storage service. I wasn't taking any chances. That evening at dinner, I asked Krista casually, "How was your meeting with the shampoo supplier in Los Angeles?" She didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. "Wonderful. We negotiated a new shipment. Got a great price on organic products that clients have been requesting." "And how's Ruben doing?" Her face changed. The color drained from it in a second. Her fork clattered against her plate. Jonathan and Camilla looked up from their food, sensing the sudden tension. How do you know?" "I know everything," I said calmly, keeping my voice level despite the rage burning in my chest. "I know about the hotel. About the money. About the child." Jonathan and Camilla sat at the table, staring at us with fear in their eyes. Jonathan's face had gone pale and Camilla looked like she might cry. "Kids, go to your rooms," I requested, trying to keep my voice gentle for them. "But Dad," Jonathan started. "Now please. Your mother and I need to talk." When they left, closing Jonathan's door with a soft click, Krista started crying. "Philip, I can explain everything." 20 years, I interrupted her, my voice harder now. 20 years I loved you, trusted you, built a life with you. And you. "I loved him before you," she shouted, tears streaming down her face. "We broke up because of his family's relocation, but when he wrote to me again, I realized I never stopped loving him. All these years I thought about him. Wondered what could have been. Then why were you with me? Why did you marry me? Why did you have my children? You were reliable, stable. You gave me security, a nice home, a comfortable life." She said it like these were positive things, like I should be grateful she'd chosen me for these reasons. Those words hurt more than the betrayal itself. I was just a safe option, a backup plan, a meal ticket, while she dreamed about someone else the entire time. "Pack your things," I said, standing up from the table. "I want you gone by morning." "This is my apartment too," she protested, standing as well. "The apartment is rented in my name. You took $70,000 from our account. You're pregnant with another man's child. You think the court will be on your side." I kept my voice low so the kids wouldn't hear, but the anger was clear. "You can't do this. I have rights. Those are my children too." "Were they your children when you were spreading your legs for Ruben in a Los Angeles hotel room? Were you thinking about Jonathan and Camilla then?" She slapped me. Hard. My cheek stung, but I didn't react. I just looked at her calmly. "That's assault. Should I call the police? Add that to my evidence file?" She backed away, realizing she'd made a mistake. "Philip, please. We can work through this. Marriage counseling. I'll end things with Ruben. We can start over." "Start over?" I laughed bitterly. "You're carrying his child. You stole our savings to fund your affair. You've been lying to me for 6 months, probably longer. There's nothing left to start over with. The marriage is dead. You killed it." The next few weeks were hell. Krista hired an attorney, an aggressive divorce lawyer named Robert Chin who specialized in getting favorable settlements for wives. I hired my own, Linda Werner, a woman with 20 years of experience in family law and a reputation for being ruthless when necessary. Linda was in her 50s, with sharp gray eyes that missed nothing. When she saw all my evidence, the photographs, the emails, the bank statements, the GPS tracking data, she smiled. "This will be easy. She doesn't have a leg to stand on. Adultery, dissipation of marital assets, pregnancy by another man. In California, even though it's a no-fault divorce state, these factors will absolutely influence custody and property division." But the hardest part was talking to the children. Jonathan asked one evening, about a week after Krista moved out to stay with her friend from the salon, "Dad, why doesn't Mom live with us anymore?" I didn't want to poison their souls with hatred, but they deserved to know the truth. An age-appropriate version of the truth, anyway. "Your mom did something that hurt our family very badly. She betrayed our trust. Sometimes adults make terrible mistakes, choices that have consequences for everyone around them. Did she cheat? Jonathan asked bluntly. He was only 10, but he'd obviously heard enough to figure it out. I nodded. Yes. She's been seeing someone else. And the baby she's carrying isn't mine. Camilla burst into tears. I wanted a baby sister. Now we won't have one? You'll still have a sister, sweetie. But she'll be your half-sister and she'll live with your mom, not with us. Jonathan just nodded slowly. He'd always been mature for his age, understanding things that other kids missed. Is that why she took all those trips to Los Angeles? Yes. I knew something was wrong, he said quietly. She stopped helping me with my homework, stopped asking about my day. It was like she wasn't really there anymore, even when she was home. His words broke my heart because they were true. Krista had checked out of our family long before I discovered the affair. Meanwhile, I contacted Krista's employer. She rented the space for her salon from a woman named Patricia Rodriguez, who owns several commercial properties in San Marcos. I met Patricia at a Starbucks near her office and told her the situation. I showed her some of the evidence. Nothing too graphic, but enough to make it clear what was happening. Patricia was shocked, her hand covering her mouth in disbelief. She told me you two were divorcing because of your infidelity. She said you'd been having an affair with a colleague at your lab, and that's why she needed to work extra hours, to save money for her own place. I felt so sorry for her. I even reduced her rent because I thought she was a victim. Another lie. Another person manipulated by Krista's false narrative. Patricia felt betrayed too, realizing she'd been deceived. I could see the anger in her eyes. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you the truth, I said. But I thought you should know who you're doing business with. Thank you for telling me, Patricia said, her voice cold now. I'll be reviewing her lease agreement very carefully. But the most interesting thing happened when I contacted Ruben directly. I found his work phone number on the website of the dietology clinic where he worked, a fancy wellness center in Beverly Hills that catered to celebrities and wealthy clients. I called him from my office at the lab during my lunch break. This is Ruben, he answered professionally. Ruben Martinez? The dietitian. Yes, how can I help you? This is Philip Johnson, Krista's husband. Silence. Long, uncomfortable silence. Then, Philip? Krista's husband? Panic in his voice. Former husband, soon to be. Tell me, Ruben, are you ready to be a father? Because Krista tells me you're excited about your child together. More silence. I could hear him breathing heavily. What do you mean? Krista is pregnant with your child. She says you're planning to be together to be a family. I'm assuming you're ready to take responsibility for the child? For her? She's going to lose her job when her landlord finds out the truth. She'll lose custody of her other 2 children. She'll have a $70,000 debt to repay. She'll need a lot of support. Financial support. Emotional support. You ready for that? Even longer silence. I could imagine him sitting at his desk, his face pale, realizing the fantasy was becoming a very expensive reality. Listen, I didn't plan. This was just what? A fling? An affair? Something fun with no consequences? You wrote her about a real family. About looking for apartments. Were those lies to keep her interested? I have a wife. 3 kids. I never thought. Krista knew this was just. Look, this is complicated. It's not complicated at all, Ruben. You got my wife pregnant. She destroyed her marriage for you. And now you're backing out because it got real. Because there are actual consequences. Because your comfortable life might be disrupted. You're a coward. Don't call my wife. Please. I'll lose everything. You should have thought about that before you started fucking my wife. I hung up the phone, feeling a grim satisfaction. Krista called me an hour later, sobbing hysterically. What did you do? Ruben says we can't be together. That it was a mistake. That he won't leave his wife. He won't even return my calls now. I just had a conversation with him, man to man. Turns out he's not ready to leave his family. Strange, right? You destroy our family for him and he doesn't even want to be with you. He just wanted the excitement without the responsibility. You ruined everything. We had plans. We were going to be happy. No, Krista. You ruined everything. You made these choices. You lied. You cheated. You stole. You got pregnant with another man's child. These are the consequences of your actions, not mine. I hate you. I hate you so much. Good. Hate is better than indifference. At least now you feel something real for me. I hung up while she was still screaming. The court process lasted 2 months. My attorney presented all the evidence, correspondence, photographs, bank statements, DNA test results. Krista had agreed to an amniocentesis after pressure from the court and her attorney. The test confirmed what we already knew: the child was Ruben's, not mine. Ruben had also been subpoenaed, forced to provide a DNA sample. He'd shown up to court looking miserable and terrified, probably worried his wife would find out. His attorney negotiated for his name to be kept out of public records as much as possible. The judge, an elderly woman named Barbara Henderson who had a reputation for being tough but fair, listened to both sides. Krista's attorney tried to argue that her affair was a symptom of marital problems, that I'd been emotionally distant and unavailable because of my work. He tried to paint her as a victim of a cold, neglectful husband who drove her into another man's arms. Linda destroyed those arguments methodically. She presented testimony from our friends, Edward, our neighbors, even some of Krista's clients from the salon who had known us as a couple. Everyone said the same thing: we'd seemed happy, devoted to each other and our children. She showed evidence of my involvement in the kids' lives, school events I'd attended, coaching Jonathan's soccer team, helping with Camilla's school projects. She demonstrated that I'd been a present, engaged husband and father, not the distant workaholic Krista's attorney tried to portray. Judge Henderson rendered her verdict on a cold December morning. Having reviewed all evidence and testimony, this court finds that Mrs. Johnson engaged in adultery, misappropriated marital funds for her personal use, and is pregnant with another man's child while still legally married to Mr. Johnson. These actions demonstrate a fundamental breach of the marital contract and a disregard for the well-being of her existing children. Therefore, primary custody of minor children Jonathan and Camilla is awarded to Mr. Johnson. Mrs. Johnson is granted supervised visitation once per week. Property division. Mr. Johnson retains the rental rights to the marital apartment and all joint savings, minus the $70,000 that Mrs. Johnson must repay over a period of 5 years. No alimony is awarded. Mrs. Johnson will be responsible for all expenses related to the child she is currently carrying, as it is not Mr. Johnson's biological child. This divorce is granted on the grounds of irreconcilable differences, effective immediately. Krista sat in the courtroom paler than a ghost. Her attorney tried to object, argue for reconsideration, but Judge Henderson was firm. The decision was final. After the court proceedings, Patricia officially terminated Krista's salon lease. "I can't have someone operating a business in my property who lies like that," Patricia told me when she called to let me know. "I have a reputation to maintain. And honestly, I feel personally betrayed. I trusted her. Without work, without her children living with her full-time, without Ruben, pregnant and with a $70,000 debt, Krista's life had become ruins. She gambled everything on a fantasy with Ruben and lost it all. I didn't feel sorry for her. Maybe that makes me cruel, but every action has consequences. She'd made her choices freely, knowing what she was risking. Or maybe she'd never thought she'd get caught. Maybe she'd thought she could have it all. The stability and security I provided, plus the excitement and passion with Ruben. A month later she gave birth to a girl. Ruben refused to acknowledge the child, even though the DNA test confirmed paternity. His attorney argued that since the conception occurred during an affair, he shouldn't be held financially responsible. The court disagreed and ordered him to pay child support, but he wasn't required to have visitation if he didn't want it. And he didn't want it. His wife had filed for divorce when everything came out, taking their 3 children and half his assets. His fancy Beverly Hills wellness clinic had fired him due to the scandal. Apparently, infidelity doesn't look good when you're counseling wealthy clients about lifestyle choices. Ruben's perfect life had imploded just as dramatically as Krista's. Krista moved in with her mother in El Cajon, about 40 minutes away. Her mother had never liked me, always thought Krista had settled by marrying a scientist instead of someone more exciting. Now she blamed me for everything, conveniently ignoring her daughter's choices. But she took Krista in, helped with the baby, gave her a place to live while she tried to figure out her next steps. I saw Krista for the last time in December when she came for her supervised visit with the children. The supervision was required because the court was concerned about her emotional stability after everything that had happened. The visits took place at a family center in Escondido, a neutral location with staff present. Jonathan was cold, barely speaking to her. Camilla cried through most of the visit, confused about why her family had fallen apart. Krista tried to hug them but they pulled away. The baby, she'd named her Isabella, stayed with Krista's mother during these visits. Jonathan and Camilla hadn't met their half-sister yet, and I wasn't going to force them. "They hate me," Krista whispered as the visit ended, tears running down her face. They don't hate you, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. The supervisor was watching us carefully, making notes. They're disappointed. You were their mother. You were supposed to protect them, to put them first. Instead, you destroyed their family for a man who didn't even want you in the end. I made a mistake, she said, her voice breaking. A terrible mistake. But I'm still their mother. Doesn't that count for anything? Being a mother is more than biology, I said. It's about showing up. Being present. Putting your children's needs before your own desires. You failed at that. Maybe someday you can rebuild your relationship with them. But that's up to you to earn back, and it will take years. Maybe a lifetime. She looked at me with desperate eyes. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? Forgive you? Maybe someday for my own peace of mind. But forget? Never. And we'll never be together again if that's what you're hoping. That ship sailed the moment you climbed into bed with Ruben. Now, sitting in our apartment on a quiet January evening, watching the kids do their homework at the dining table, I understand that life goes on. The pain hasn't disappeared completely, but it's become duller, more manageable. Like a scar instead of an open wound. Jonathan is doing well in school, even better than before actually. His math teacher says he's gifted, might qualify for advanced placement programs. Camilla is in therapy to help her process everything, and her drawings have become less dark, more colorful again. She's starting to smile more, laugh at jokes. Krista's betrayal taught me that love without trust is an empty shell. That sometimes the people we love most can cause the greatest pain. That the life you think you have might be built on lies, and when those lies are exposed, everything crumbles. But I also learned that you can start over. That children are stronger than we think. That justice exists, even if the path to it is difficult and painful. That integrity matters, that doing the right thing matters even when it hurts. Edward stops by our place in the evening with pizza from our favorite place. We sit in the kitchen while the kids laugh at some cartoon in the living room. It's nice to hear them laugh again. How are you? Edward asks, biting into his slice of pepperoni pizza. Better, I answer honestly. Much better. And it's the truth. Life without Krista is hard, but it's honest. I'm not living in a lie anymore. Not building a future on a false foundation. Not sharing my bed with someone who dreams about another man. Not raising another man's child while believing it's mine. Sometimes I think about those 20 years. Were they completely a lie? Did she ever love me at all? Or was I always just the safe choice, the backup plan, the provider while she fantasized about her high school boyfriend? But then I look at Jonathan and Camilla. They're real. They're genuine. And they're the best thing that came from that marriage. They're proof that something good can come from something that ended badly. Krista made her choice. Now she lives with the consequences. She has a daughter she's raising alone, a part-time job as a receptionist at a veterinary clinic because no one will rent her space for her own salon anymore, supervised visits with the children who barely want to see her, a $70,000 debt, and the knowledge that she destroyed everything for a man who didn't want her when things got real. And us, the kids and me, we're building a new life. Without betrayal. Without lies. Without someone who values excitement over loyalty, fantasy over reality, selfish desire over family responsibility. Just the three of us against the world. And you know what? We're doing okay. Better than okay actually. We're honest with each other. We trust each other. And that's worth more than any perfect-looking marriage that's rotten underneath. Thank you for watching this video. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. The screen now displays a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.